Good evening, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I'd like to welcome you all to the first in a long-awaited comeback of the Startup in Dentistry webinars. We started in lockdown doing a few webinars, and at the time when we were all jobless, worrying about our futures, and I think we used to get 150 to 200 people on calls. I'm sure times have all changed for all of us, and we've got busy lives now. But it gives me great pleasure to introduce Simon Reynolds. Simon is the MD of Patient Plan Direct. He is a fantastic guy, and he is going to be regaling us and sharing some tricks and secrets of what it takes to run a successful patient membership plan. Before we start, I'm just going to highlight a few things about today's presentation. It's going to be a very informal chat. Those people that are registered on the call, please feel free to ask questions. We want it to be as informal as possible and as interactive as possible. And I think what we're really trying to get from today is really the ins and outs of how important it is to have a membership plan as part of your practice metrics going forwards. So, Simon, without any further introduction, welcome to the call. How are you today, buddy?
Yeah, good. Cheers, Minnie. I really appreciate you having me on and allowing us to extend some hints and tips, all things membership plan.
Brilliant. So, Simon, if you just want to start by maybe giving us a little bit of a background about yourself, first of all, maybe before dentistry and what sort of brought you to where you are now.
Wow. Okay. Well, my route into dentistry was by accident, which I hear a lot of people who work in the industry that aren't sort of on the clinical side of things. It's often the case. So. I actually did a degree and then a master's, and I actually started a PhD. Realised very quickly that's how I moved to Manchester, where I live now, and I realised very quickly I'd made a huge mistake. I thought it was just going to be another 3 years of university, and realised it was going to take me down a completely different path that I wanted to take. So, dropped out of that and actually joined a graduate scheme, a 12-week program specifically for grads that were effectively work experience in what at the time was the parent company of Patient Plan Direct. So this is going back now sort of 13 years. Yeah. So that company was a payments bureau, and they'd got this subsidiary brand, Patient Plan Direct, and that was a plan provider, very, very small challenger brand at that time. And then over the course of the years, in fact, after probably 2 or 3 years with First Capital, I sort of segued into working in Patient Plan Direct specifically. And 13 years later, here we are.
13 years later. So, I mean, in the industry, you must have seen a lot of change firsthand. I mean, over those 13 years, what are some of the things that you've seen in terms of practice management and plans? How's that sort of come across to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, the obvious one is the digital dentistry and the rise of that over the last few years. Certainly more recently, I'm sure it's no surprise, it's alarming, the shift towards private dentistry. As you can appreciate, as a plan provider, we're dealing with lots of practices that unfortunately are getting to a point where they can't make NHS dentistry commercially viable and are having to look at their options to make that transition to private. That's been the case over the last 2-3 years, and arguably, I think the biggest change that I've seen in my time in dentistry, that real drive towards that. So yeah, I would say, and the other thing more recently, Midi, and probably very relevant to this conversation, is where we're seeing more and more squat practices. I don't think there's ever been a better time to open a squat practice, just because of the patient access issues that public unfortunately face, and that creates a pool of opportunity for squat practices looking for new patients.
That's really cool. Can we just get a bit of a history? I mean, you've obviously explained your history. Can we get a bit of a history, Patient Plan Direct, and how the genesis of the actual company's been?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, initially it was a subsidiary of a payments bureau, and that actually came about by, it was actually a company that the company was called First Capital Cash Flow, and this company, a dental company, wanted to bring a plan provider solution to market. So they came to First Capital for the payment side of things, and they went to an insurance brokerage for the A&E element, which a lot of plan providers incorporate as a supplementary benefit with their whole proposition to help practices to promote plan. There were multiple meetings and it never came off. But the First Capital Cash Flow and the insurance brokerage actually said, "This sounds like a good idea. Shall we have a go at it? Shall we start a joint venture?" Didn't know anything about dentistry, and so came to market as a joint venture. In all honesty, Midi, it really didn't sort of get momentum for the first good few years. There were lots of challenges with it being a joint venture. Obviously, we didn't understand, dentistry. And so at a point in time, a few years into that journey, it was either, are we just going to sort of pack this in, or is one of us going to try and take it on? First Capital Cash Flow made that decision to try and take it on. And I would say that's when it then started to gain a little bit of momentum. It's separated out now about 7 or 8 years ago, and it's been a standalone private company since that time. Excuse me. And I would say since then, the company's really evolved from, again, being honest, it came to market as we're a very, very, well, at the time, an extremely low cost provider in terms of the admin fees that we charge. We're now still a cost saving proposition versus other plan providers in the market. But we've very much evolved our solution to meet the demands of dental practices. So what I mean by that is, arguably from the outset, we were just an admin service, and we thought that, we were a lot less than the other plan providers, but it was just the admin side of things. And so the evolution of the sort of proposition, the support, the service that we now incorporate is that, we provide training, we provide promotional literature, we've developed our tech specifically for the needs of dental practice and continue to do so. And I would say now we have a very focused solution. So everything we do is purely surrounded around plans.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're very much a full service provider in that we feel we offer everything a practice needs to meet their respective plan objectives.
No, that's really cool. Well, I mean, one of the questions I had for you was really, in a crowded marketplace, there are different names and different brands. And again, I don't know if this is swearing, but if I can name them, like Denplan and and Practice Plan. I mean, these are almost synonymous with dentistry. How do you differentiate yourself from all these named brands?
Yeah, it's a great question, Midi. And I think, the first thing to sort of, I'm not going to sort of come on here and just poo-poo the competition, because both of those brands that you've just mentioned there have clearly built very reputable brands over a long, much older companies than we are. I would say the biggest differentiator is that with ourselves, we're a practice branded solution. So that's particularly relevant in comparison to the Denplan. And I would argue perhaps so Denplan's a consumer-facing brand, and in many instances, some practices like that. They like that perhaps patients see a recognised brand. For practices that don't like that, and I would say perhaps potentially in this day and age, then maybe there's an argument that you should be developing your own brand. Then that's where our proposition as a practice branded solution comes in. The other differentiator with ourselves, when I talked before about us being a very focused provider. So what I mean by that is that, for example, Practice Plan offer their workshop to us. They have their Denplan have regulatory support. They run their events. They run other auxiliary services and elements of support that aren't necessarily plan specific. Now, if a practice taps into that, and that's all reflected in a higher admin fee, then that's fantastic. But for us, our message is that if you don't want to pay for those other bells and whistles, then you just want to focus on knowing what you're paying for with being and that being plan related, then that's how we sit in the market.
Got it. I mean, because that's a very good point that you make there, because you pay for those extra services. You might not see it in your bottom line, but that they need to make their money somewhere, don't they? These are the companies. So all the events and things, if you're benefiting from them, fine. But if you're not, you're paying for them. That's in essence what we're saying.
Exactly, yeah, and that's the beauty of a competitive marketplace, isn't it? You know, it's we're not going to be the plan provider for every practice, but I think importantly, nor is Denplan, nor is Practiplan, nor is the other couple of prominent plan providers that are out there.
Yeah.
And I would actually encourage a practice that's thinking either about plan for the first time, or maybe you've bought a practice and there's an existing plan base in there and you're just assessing your options in terms of looking at a provider to work with moving forward. Meet with 2 or 3. Don't meet with them all because we're all busy people. Do your research, see what recommendations are out there. But you need to be confident with the person. Try and always ask about who is the person who's going to be looking after my practice moving forward. We've got a business development team now of 8 people that covers the breadth of the UK.
Yeah.
Some really experienced people in there. Janice, now head of business development, worked in dental plans for over 30 years. Yeah. And other members of the team have worked in practice or have come from finance backgrounds, etc., etc. So you've got to be confident in the person that's going to be looking after you and helping you to achieve your objectives, and that's going to be different from region to region and provider to provider.
Okay. So can I just throw 3 different scenarios at you, which I think will be relevant for the group? Sure. So if I was a squat practice owner, which I obviously am, how do practice plans, how do these membership plans, how does that become so important to my practice? So that's the first scenario for a squat practice. Then I'd like to know, in terms of an existing practice, can you give me like a scenario of how that kind of transition goes in? And then the third one, which isn't really so relevant for our group, but I just want to know is, well, if I'm a fully NHS practice, what kind of provision or what kind of services can you offer to help me transition? So 3 for the price of 1, Simon.
Okay, so starting off then, why, I guess almost then, the question's almost, what's the business case for having a membership plan in a squat practice?
Yes.
Well, I think as a new business, what you wanting to do, you wanting to importantly generate income, and probably more importantly generate good strong cash flow, which is the killer of a lot of businesses. Yeah. So in the early stages, so offering a membership plan, which is effectively breaking down the costs of ongoing routine care for patients. Having that in place and getting patients to join that creates that cash flow and that financial security that is so important in the early stages of a business. Yeah. And the patients committing to that, then they're expressing loyalty to a practice. If they are doing that, then and let's say your typical example of a membership plan is maybe 2 exams per annum, 2 hygiene visits per annum. Yep. A nominal discount, and then we tie in that A&E benefit for patients as well as an added proposition. So if patients are signing up to that, then there's going to be less failure to attends. Yeah. Because patients who are paying for it are more likely to just visit on the agreed frequency, and because of that, that gives you the opportunity to ethically up and cross-sell when those patients are up there, perhaps with cosmetic or aesthetic services that you offer in practice.
Yes.
So yeah, I would say that as a high level sort of rationalizes why a practice may want a membership plan in place in the early stages.
Yeah, with the squat practice, just to jump in there, I found it really interesting because when I started the squat practice, I mean, first of all, I'm sure like people on this call, I know Arnold's on this call as well, I was absolutely petrified. I was scared of my own shadow. I was so desperate for people to say yes. Sometimes, initially we did a few sort of cheaper checkups and all of this kind of stuff. But actually what I found the biggest uptake was when I was talking to patients, even though I was nervous or whatever, they wanted to go ahead with me. And even people who didn't really know me wanted to go ahead. But as soon as I mentioned about the membership plan, it was really interesting. People that I thought, wouldn't want to go ahead because they don't know me, they actually wanted that kind of security. And then I have to be honest with you, I think it's a no-brainer when you offer a percentage discount on the treatment. And again, Simon, I'd like to know your thoughts on this. And again, I'll open up to the group later, but do you think it's right? Because initially when we started, we were thinking, we'll get people to sign up, make them pay for a month or 2 or 3 first, then they can get the discounts. But what I realized was the biggest thing is that if they signed up, they can get the discounts immediately. Now, it's obviously a bit of a financial hit, or in theory, but actually what you're getting is longevity. I mean, would you have any sort of thoughts on that side of things?
Yeah, look, you've hit the nail on the head, really, Midi, in terms of your changing mindset there. For me, I think there are other practices as well where they would say, right, well, you need to pay for your, let's say it's a new patient that's coming for an exam today, and they say, right, we need to pay for your exam today, and then you can join the plan, and then your next exam will be, inclusive. For me, I get the mindset of that because they think, well, a patient could join the plan, pay for 1 month, cancel, and we'll never see them again. For every patient that tries to do that, there will be 99 that just think, do you know what? I really like this proposition. I want to be at this practice, and commit to it for the long term. So and tied in with that is, yeah, I just think just offer discounts from the outset, because in doing that, you're just presenting value to a patient, and I think again the likelihood of the longevity of the relationship is increased.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say, don't be hesitant to do that, or feel like you're losing out in any way. I think another very relevant point here, though, Midi, is that it's so important to set your fee per item, pay as you go pricing at a level where even with that discount, you are still generating the required hourly rate to make your practice profitable. And I think if so it's really, the discount that you take off is irrelevant if the starting point is correct. And I would really encourage a practice to work with their accountant on that and we can help with that sort of thing as well.
Yeah.
But just to ensure that the correct remuneration, even considering the discount, is at the level required.
Yeah. I've got a really hard question for you now, Simon, and I hope the listeners agree or like this one. Dentists compare, even the ones
Yeah.
that compare. How do you advise or help a dentist when they go, oh, should I charge £18, £21, £25, £30 a month? Because I've seen practices in the Outer Hebrides charging way more per month than a practice in central London, or somewhere else. How do we? What have you got? Have you got any thoughts on that, Simon?
Well, if I had £1 for every time somebody asked me, just what are my local competition doing? I think it's very easy to get sucked into just comparing. And, in a lot of ways, you've got to back yourself in terms of whatever the patient experience and care that you're offering is versus the practices. And what I mean by that, and particularly, yourself, Midi, and the beautiful practice you've created, don't go sort of, comparing yourself to a practice down the road that's in desperate need of a lick of pain, and perhaps it's just not on the same level. It comes back as well to the point I made there about just ensuring that your fees are set at the correct level, where you're generating the hourly rate that's needed to create a sustainable business model.
Yeah.
And that's going to differ from practice to practice. That being said, obviously, it's not just a case of well, if there's a practice down the road offering, I don't know, 2 exam, 2 hygiene plan for £17 and you're offering £32 a month, then clearly there's probably some things to look into there. But certainly local competition should not be the primary or sole element to setting your plan pricing.
And just before we move on and talk about sort of the existing practices and also the NHS, how people would tailor from that, how do you and your team help us in that period? I mean, what kind of things can you help us do? Do you help look at the structure and the finances?
Yeah, definitely. So, we have various calculators where we can plug numbers, help you determine an appropriate percentage discount, help you to, assess what your hourly rate is, what it needs to be. And we would 100% get involved in then looking at the structure of a plan. I mean, the takeaway there, though, Midi, is that my biggest advice around structuring a plan is that it should be more cost effective than a pay-as-you-go basis. Doesn't need to be a lot more cost effective, but just so that you can you can go with that message, that it's quite a strong message, I think, to encourage patients to join the plan. The other biggest thing there is that there's a lot of people, I think, that almost look for a uniqueness in their plan proposition, and the reality is that it's probably, you know, the patient journey and the care that they receive that's going to be your uniqueness. In terms of the actual plan proposition, it just needs to be simple. You know, we come across some practices that are offering 12 different plans with all sorts of different slight variations. In 99% of cases, having a 2 exam, 2 hygiene, 2 exam, 4 hygiene, 1 exam, 1 hygiene, with a nominal discount and the supplementary A&E benefit is going to serve 99% of your patient base and the care that they need. And I think keeping it nice, a proposition nice and simple, helps to get the team's engagement, helps them to understand the plan and be confident in promoting it to patients. So yeah, keeping things simple is key.
Okay, I'll let you answer my question, and we can get into the juicy stuff, which is the money and the associates and how we sell it to the rest of our team.
Sure. So what the third bit then was about the NHS piece, was it?
Yeah, the NHS. How do you do that for a practice that's steeped in the NHS?
Yeah, so I think what can I say about this? There's a range of different scenarios really that we come across currently, whereby you've got perhaps a practice that's got a UDA contract, and they're not taking on any more patients because they're fulfilling those UDAs. And so they're just looking to introduce a plan as a vehicle to offer patients access to a private dentistry and a means of budgeting for that. And you know, we've got lots of sort of scripts and team training that we can run through to help practices to achieve that objective.
Yeah.
One thing that used to be very popular that we're certainly seeing a lot less of now is a principal or clinician or clinicians-led conversion. Typically, it's a principal dentist. So, you know, principal dentist wants to go private and leave the UDA NHS care delivery to his associate dentists. And we're seeing a lot less of that now. And that's really driven via the recruitment challenges that I think the industry faces.
Yeah.
So because there's little point in, as a principal dentist, going private if you can't actually find associates to backfill and deliver those UDAs. Otherwise, you're just robbing Peter to pay Paul. So we're seeing a lot less of that. What's a lot more popular, and to be honest, the degree of it is quite scary, is practices that are just handing back their entire contracts. You know, so some of them very, very sizable, you know, 30, 40,000 UDAs. They can't make it work anymore. It's not commercially viable. They can't find the resources to actually fulfill the NHS care anyway. And in that instance, clearly that is an extremely nervous process for a practice to go through. So we've got a very, very structured means of working through that with a practice from the outset, looking at plugging some numbers into a calculator and looking at what a successful conversion needs to look like in terms of the volume of patients that we need to retain, looking at the split of the demographic, so exempt patients versus adult versus kids, working out the plan price, and ultimately just getting to a place to sort of present a forecast of what a successful conversion looks like.
Yeah.
The next step then is getting the team on board, getting the team engaged. If you've got a team where there's perhaps you know, there could be team members that have worked in a predominantly NHS environment for 15, 20 years, you know, this is going to be a huge step change to them, and they could be very nervous about patients' reactions, and they need to fully understand the rationale as to why the practice has decided to go down this route. So we've got a fantastic team who would spend a lot of time in training that in, dealing with all the objections, giving comfort to practices in knowing what to expect, and then we support with the patient communication piece. And when that news does hit, then we also offer in-practice support to ensure that the team's got a bit of a comfort blanket around them to in those early stages when there could be questions from patients. But yeah, at the minute we're doing a lot of that, and I honestly don't know one that's not gone as planned in the last couple of years. They all go at different paces, and there's different little hurdles that we come across. But yeah, they've all gone in the direction that the practice ultimately wanted to go in.
All right, Simon, I've given you easy questions. Just again, a reminder to the listeners and the people that are on live, please do ask the questions either in the Q&A section, or you can put them in the chat, and then myself and Simon will sort of get to them for you. No questions off limits, I don't think, is there, Simon?
No, go for it. Yeah.
So let's get some juicy ones. Let me start off with this one, and I'm sure I speak for lots of people. As an associate, I absolutely hated plan. So you probably didn't want to hear that, but it was just like, I was so confident that my diaries were busy, my patients were there. Why would I want to go on to plan as an associate?
Yeah. Well, give me a little bit more detail then, Biddy, around
in fairness, I should qualify that. So I worked initially in a fully NHS practice. And actually, as you said, I got so busy that eventually I converted my whole list to fully private, or I stopped taking on NHS. And because I was also reducing my days down, I was oversubscribed anyway. But what I found was when I stopped the NHS, it was a really easy buffer to just say, look, I'm not doing the NHS, but I'm doing this plan. And I did probably get about a 90% conversion of my existing patients. But what I was thinking was, well, privately, I'm busy enough. I can just the hassle of talking to them and converting them. I thought it'd have been just easier to just keep taking the private work. That was then before I was a principal, but I'm trying to be controversial, Simon. So
yeah. And was there an element there as well, Midi, of you felt like because perhaps with the plan, there's often the membership plan we're talking about here. Let's not get into sort of care or capitation style plans unless you want to. But more common these days are a membership maintenance plan, which is what we described before. So 2 exams, 2 hygiene, and then a nominal discount off treatment. So I'm guessing as well there was I
think it was
an element there that you felt like you were losing out on that percentage discount in the treatment.
Yeah, as associates, you may not always see the benefits. So again, it'd be good to know sort of what you say to either new principals or new business owners about sort of how do you manage and incentivize and actually bring your team on board.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two things there actually, Midi, because it's the wider team as well recognizing the benefits to the practice in having planned patients. So, I mean, look, the most important thing is pounds, shillings, and pence. So, we do come across it a lot where associates don't sort of see the value in plan and do feel that they just generate less revenue from planned patients because of however the remuneration split and arrangements have been agreed with the principal dentist. So I'm not going to get too much into it, Midi, because we did discuss this before. But what I will do is I will get one of our, just to encourage a little bit of engagement in the Facebook group.
Yep.
I'm going to get one of my colleagues just to share his thoughts around how to, because it's important whether you're doing an hourly for example for hygienists as well. This is relevant. So some hygienists aren't necessarily motivated to see planned patients for the same reasons. So I'm going to get him to record a video and just talk around the options around paying hourly rate or a percentage, the importance of cross charging for hygienist services with planned patients. And just some general tips around perhaps what a principal dentist can do to present the correct remuneration split for planned patients so that it's attractive to associates, because that is the key thing. I think one of the big things, though, that is very relevant to this is the stats around the visiting frequency of fee per item patients versus planned patients. So, if you've got a 2 exam, 2 hygiene planned patient, irrespective of whether they come every 6 months on the dot or whether it's 7 or 8 months, or over the course of the 12 months, you are getting that sort of revenue for that plan patient.
Yeah.
If that's a pay-as-you-go patient, fee per item patient, and irrespective of how on the ball you are with your recalls, quite often, patients can, even if you're booking them in for the next appointment at the current appointment, life can get in the way. They can make a change they could cancel an appointment, they could put it off, they could, it's around Christmas time. I don't really want to go to the dentist and having that outlay at this time of year.
Yeah.
And so it gets put off to January, to Feb, to March.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, with the plan income, whereas that guaranteed is every, you get in the course of whatever's included in that plan, that income within the calendar year.
Yeah.
With a pay-as-you-go patient, if that slips to 7 to 8 to 9 months over the course of 5 years or so, that's quite significant in terms of a revenue hit to your practice. So I think that's a really important point to drive home.
Yeah.
And just another point that you mentioned there about incentives.
Yes.
We would really encourage that, you want your front of house team to be motivated to promote plan.
Yes.
Now, another thing we really train in is we talk about the patient journey. So the importance of everybody playing their part to promote plan. So from the outset, you want to make sure that you've got your plan maybe mentioned on your website, that you mention it regularly on your socials. You've got promotional literature as a reference point in your practice.
Yeah.
The team are first in introducing that as can I just give you this to have a read about while you go and see whoever dentist you're going to go and see today. And then the importance of that clinical endorsement. So it really does come down to the clinician, the dentist or the hygienist that they're seeing, and them being confident in expressing the benefits of the patient joining the plan. They're there to see that clinical person with those clinical expertise. So that endorsement is key.
Yeah.
And then there should be a handover back to the reception. This should all flow to create a patient journey that maximizes the chances of that patient joining the plan. And, your front of house team, in my opinion, it doesn't need to be a huge incentive, but there should be some form of incentive to make it worth their while.
What kind of things would you suggest, Simon?
Well, it could just be it could be a target. So, look, if we get 50 patients signed up in the next 2 or 3 months, or whatever the appropriate target is, dependent on the dynamics and scale of a practice.
Yeah.
It could just be, if we hit this target, then we're going to go out as a team. It could be, look, for every patient that joins the plan, we're going to put X amount into a pot, and then we're going to divide that up in terms of vouchers for the practice.
Yes.
And my advice would be just to perhaps ask the team what they want within reason. Give them a little bit of a ballpark as to what could be in the pot to share. But then ask them, do they want to go on a night out? Do they want to go? Do they want vouchers? Do they want something else? And if you do that, then it's only going to help, because they're going to be motivated in working towards something that they want.
Okay. Simon, we'll move on to some more specifics now of actually your processes. But before that, there are 3 questions in the group, so I'll ask them in order, and if you're happy to just answer them live, and then we'll sort of go towards summarizing and closing the meeting for today. So the first question is, are membership signups completed online? What is the process for patients? Do they have to do this at the clinic, or do they get an email to complete the sign up from home?
Either or. So with ourselves, ultimately, the sign up is completed in an online form. We can provide a paper form just to catch the information. For example, maybe if you've got an elderly patient, but then the practice ultimately just key that into our online form.
Yeah.
Now, that online form, if, say, for example, a patient isn't committed there and then and doesn't want to join right there in practice, then the practice team can follow up and include a sign-up link in an email. You can also have that hyperlinked in your website, so you could have sign-up options via your website. But as a provider, and again, this all plays part and parcel in why our admin fees are often 2 to 3 times less than other major providers, is that we do try to adopt paperless processes, and online sign-up being one of them wherever possible.
Nice. Oh, I think that answers the next question really well. What are your fees? Are there different fee tiers, for example, over 1,500 patients?
Yep. So we're extremely transparent about our fees. We're the only plan provider or major provider that outlines them on our website. So if you look at Dental Plan and Practice Plan's website, for example, you won't see their admin fees there. So our admin fee is £1.36 per patient per month. That includes VAT, and importantly, it includes a global dental A&E scheme for patients, which is highly comparable to the sort of cover that the likes of Dental Plan or Practice Plan incorporate. And that admin fee then comes down to £1.21 when you get to 1,500 patients, and £1.06 when you get to 3,000 patients. And then we do have a rate for groups of practices that collectively have over 7,000 patients as well. Yeah, that's there are admin fees.
No, that's really cool. I think you're going to answer this question in the little summary that you've got for the group, but just quickly, what do you typically see in terms of the signups for a squat practice in the first year? What patterns do you see in squats that do well with membership? And I think the last bit, what are common reasons why patients may cancel their plan other than moving away from the area? So 3 good questions there. So the first one is, what do you typically see in terms of numbers of startups for signups for a squat? And then do you see any patterns in the practices that do well? And then finally, when patients cancel, what's
Yeah, so yeah, firstly, I mean, look, the variables there are significant depending on the where the practice is, the geography of that practice, what their focus is. Is it general dentistry? Is it perhaps more cosmetic? How many surgeries have they got? So what I would say there is it's important not to sort of say, oh yeah, every squat should get 150 sign-ups or 300 sign-ups in the first year.
Yeah.
What we will do is dependent on the dynamics of a practice, of a squat practice, is we will work to have some sort of a target dependent on, and then we'll work with the practice to try and help them to achieve that target. The second point, what pattern do you see in squats that do well with membership? The key here is without a doubt the team engagement in understanding the benefits of the plan to the practice and to patients, and to be confident in promoting and selling the plan ultimately, Midi. And I think selling is a dirty word in a lot of people's mind. And we do a lot of work with practice teams to recognize that what they are promoting and what they're trying to encourage patients to join, they're not trying to rip a patient off. They're not trying to sell a dodgy second-hand car. They're generally selling a proposition that is going to encourage those patients back into practice regularly, promote preventative dentistry and reduce their risk of oral disease, and help patients in the meantime budget for their private care. I think if you can get a team on board with that and have them consistently promote, plan, and work through that patient journey that I talked about previously, that's the key. And that's our biggest objective as a plan provider, is to help a practice to make that happen. The third bit, what are the common reasons why patients may cancel their plan other than moving away from the area? Look, we've seen a dip in cancellations because I think as a provider over the last couple of years, and I think that is related to the patient access issues that we're facing. I think patients are just happy to actually have access to a dental practice and a dentist. And if you've got if you're running a well-run practice, then why would a practice have the need? Sorry, why would a patient have the need to look elsewhere? So I wouldn't say there are obviously a host of reasons why patients may cancel, but moving away is probably one of the most common. But I won't get too hooked up on that. If you focus on the growth and just getting more patients on plan, there's naturally going to be that bit of natural attrition of leavers and joiners month to month. But it's just keeping the momentum going with new joiners.
No, that's fair. And I think, like you say, sometimes it's a false economy for some people. Just one more question before we go on. Do you have any automated marketing tips to increase plan sign up?
Yeah, look, we've got some. What I would say is, if we've got that person's details, I'm happy to follow up and
Yeah.
share a few things that we do as a provider
Okay.
in terms of some of the marketing tools and advice and guides that we share with practices and implement. So yeah, more than happy to take that one offline and follow up with whoever's
Well,
answered that
Simon,
one.
would you be happy to share your email possibly for the group, and then we can put it in the
Yeah,
chat,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no
share
problem.
it in
Yeah,
the
that's
chat,
fine.
and then
Yeah,
obviously we can do it in a
yeah,
follow-up post as well.
yeah. So it's just simon@patientplandirect.co.uk.
Okay, perfect. I'll share that in the group as well so that everyone gets.
Perfect. Cheers, man.
Right, final couple of things from me. The one that I really want to know is, what are the common mistakes that people make when setting up the plans? I think you mentioned one about overcomplicating the proposition, but what are the commonest mistakes that you think people make?
Yeah, so overcomplicating it and perhaps offering too many different plans, and just it becomes confusing to patients potentially, but probably more importantly to the practice team, whose job it is to understand that and try and relay the message and promote plan to patients. So that's probably a big
How
one.
many is too many, Simon, would you say? Because I'm getting nervous now because I think I might be getting close.
Well, again, it depends on the, I would say in a lot of instances, just offering 3 plans is adequate, but then it depends. You may offer, if you're a fully private practice, maybe you may offer that may be adult plans. Then you may offer a couple of variations of kids plans.
Yeah.
Some practices may offer hygiene only plans,
Yeah.
proving very popular up in Scotland at the minute with the SDR changes there last year. Some practices may incorporate whitening top ups. So it's not that, what I'm saying is there should never really be a need, unless there's very unique circumstances, to have
Yeah.
20 plans. But it could be that you might have 3 adult plans, 2 kid plans, and a couple of other different plans with, I don't know, whitening top ups included or something like that. But yeah, just don't have sort of 30 plans.
So I'll tell you what I've got. So I'll share this with the group. I've got 2 and 2.
Yeah.
The 2 checkups, 2 hygienes. I've got 2 and 4, 2 checkups, 4
Yeah.
hygienes. And then we've got a children's plan, which
Yeah.
and I need to talk to you more about that because I don't think we've got our numbers right on that one, to be honest. But we've got a children's plan, which includes, I think, 1 hygiene and 2 checkups a year.
Yeah.
Then we've also, and this is by popular demand, we did get requests, although we don't advertise it, 1 checkup, 2 hygienes. So we had to create a niche one for that as well because,
Yeah.
and it made sense, to be honest. And I think from a patient point of view, I'd rather have a patient that's happy and paying that. And they come every year because they don't forget. Unlike when it's once a year, sometimes they forget, it becomes 2 years. So that was quite a popular.
Yeah.
And then I think we've got a hygiene only. So I think we've got 5. So am I struck off, Simon, or am I?
Yeah, no, you're just about in the good books there, maybe.
Good. Nice one, buddy. And yeah, sorry, I stopped you there. So were there any other common?
Yeah, so other common mistakes, making the plan more expensive than visiting on a pay-as-you-go basis. Like, why would the patient pay more to be, expressing their loyalty to you? That's a really simple one. As I say, it doesn't needs to be, it could be pence, could be a few pence, but just as long as you can go with that message that it's more cost effective than visiting on a pay-as-you-go basis, a really nice message to promote the plan. We've touched on it before, and you're saying about your own experience as an associate. You've got to make it attractive. You've got to make the remuneration model for plan patients attractive to associate dentists. And as promised, we'll share some further content around that in the Facebook group. And then, yeah, related to what we've just been talking to as well, the biggest one is if you don't get the team buy-in, and there isn't that patient journey, or your front of house team don't really know enough about the plan and can't even stimulate to start the conversation with patients, then you're really going to struggle to sort of see any good plan growth take up. And even if you've got a good team, it's just important to keep them consistent in promoting that and not have any fatigue in that process. And incentives can be a great way to achieve that. And I think just as a final one, and we hear this a lot with practices maybe in more affluent areas, is, oh, my patients don't need to budget for their care. They're happy just paying fee per item, pay as you go. Well, that's great, but depending on the nature of your practice, you could actually position this as a bit of an exclusive membership angle. But I think it's also important not just to, a plan is not just a vehicle to break down the cost with a regular payment. It's a vehicle that promotes regular attendance, and there should be a lot of health messages orientated around promoting your plan.
Yeah.
It's encouraged that regular attendance to reduce the need reduce the risk of oral disease and the need for treatment. And that should be probably the strongest message.
I like what you said about exclusive though, because I think that is true. Like make them feel special. Like, it can be a few extra things, like obviously they get discounted, maybe x-rays or free x-rays, antibiotics. Those little extra, because everyone likes a freebie, don't they? Or they like to feel special, don't they? So I like what you said.
Absolutely. I think as well, Midi, we work with a number of practices now, more so recently as well, that have just decided to go on membership only.
Yeah.
Irrespective of whether there's an exclusive angle to it or not. If it's a brand new patient and they clearly want to just come and see what it's all about, they've got the option to pay for that visit on a fee per item basis. But thereafter, if they want to continue care at the practice, then the only option is to join one of the plans. And so it's quite a bold decision, that, but very successful if you get it right.
Simon, thank you for today. I mean, I've really enjoyed talking with you. I obviously got introduced to you from a mutual friend, Joe Lovett, and he said to talk to you because obviously he knows what we're trying to do at Startup in Dentistry. At Startup in Dentistry, I'm not going to say anti-establishment, but I don't really buy into like all the big corporates, not because then I like talking to a person. And what I've personally enjoyed is talking with you and your team, is that I can pick up the phone and I can get a real human being talking back to me, I'm not just a number. And I really found, and again, I have to say kudos to you and your team. I've really found that quite refreshing. Thank
you. It means a lot.
No, honestly, mate, I'm saying it openly, and I would say this to anyone. Now, obviously, with Startup as well, what we're trying to do is partner with the right partners. So I think you've got a pretty cool offer for the membership and the readers or the listeners.
Yeah. So a couple of things to mention, really, Midi. So we, for new plan launches, we do charge a setup fee, and in many ways, that is the reason we do that, and because some other lower cost providers don't charge a setup fee. We feel that we provide a lot of value in the processes that we go through to help a practice to get things set up in the right capacity and give them every chance of success in reaching their plan objectives and growing a successful plan base. So that's the reason we do charge a setup fee. But what we've said is for any members of the group, then we're going to offer a 50% reduction off our setup fee, and that's for any squat practices. So any practice that's opened in the last 3 years, we're happy to class that as a squat. Or any practice owner that's maybe taken over an existing practice, say within the last, let's say 18 months.
Oh, wow.
Then we're happy to offer that 50% reduction in setup fee. The other thing as well, Midi, that we've been working on, and I know we've been liaising with you to get your thoughts on it, is that we recognise that you said yourself it's a very scary experience opening a squat practice, and you really do need to lean on as much support as you can. And we recognise that it's a challenge to get patients through the door. It's a challenge to then hopefully get them onto plan and to build a successful business. It's not guaranteed, albeit there has never been a better time to do it, in my opinion. And I would encourage anybody who's on the fence to sort of jump in and go for it. We've developed a bit more of a unique engagement rhythm, for want of a better term, with these squat practices that we're taking on now. So rather than we were quite structured in how we typically engage with our client practices and the support and review meetings that we have with them. But and again, if anybody wants to understand a little bit more about this, where we're just spending more time with squat practices in the first 12 months to ensure that they're on track to building that successful plan base. It's something that we've not quite launched yet. We're very close to do, and I know Midi I'm going to run through the sort of final version of what that looks like to get your input in it, because we would really value that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's if it is a squat practice in particular that's looking to launch plan, then we feel that taking this approach really does sort of perhaps set us apart from some of the other plan providers.
Yeah, that's really cool, mate. I think I like that because I do feel that dentists or the big corporates sort of feed off the fact that dentists, think we have a lot of money, but something that's bespoke and personal that's going to help, particularly startups, because it's a very, very vulnerable business. I think I read a stat the other day that said maybe 30% of squat practices fail within the first 12 to 18 months. And that's because of cash flows. So, having you as a partner that stands alongside not just squat practices, you've also said, new startups as well, or new.
Yeah.
So that's really quite cool.
Yeah.
Look, I think it's been well, thank you for your time, first of all. I've really enjoyed talking about plan. I'm a convert now from when I was an associate, because when you're a business owner, all of a sudden it starts to make sense. It really does. I think one question's just come in just before I close up. Okay, I'll just ask this one. When a patient signs up for the plan designated to the practice or the clinician within the practice for the emergency cover, and it's a good question actually, how do patients activate that when they are out of town or abroad? So I think it's a general answer for how does the emergency
Okay, yeah. So when a patient signs up, is the plan designated the practice or a clinician within the practice? So yeah, so it's it would be designated to a clinician.
Got it.
So and I guess then that's important for the typical scenario. There's 2, 3, 4 dentists at a practice.
Yeah.
Patient signs up, they're assigned to their given dentist, and then within the reports that you can pull from our online portal, then you can sort of figure out who's owed what in terms of the plan income that we send on to you guys every month. For the emergency cover, how do patients activate that when they are out of town or abroad? So we have our global dental A&E scheme. There is a website for that, and it details in there the scheme handbook, which just outlines sort of what's covered and what's not. And then there's also it details about how a patient can request assistance under the scheme. And particularly if they're out of town or abroad, so this is the away from home cover, they would simply go to any dental practice, and it will cover in the scheme handbook what is covered under the A&E cover. But they would just pay for that and then put a request for assistance in when they return from home, and we can then reimburse them to the appropriate levels.
Brilliant. Well, Simon, you've been very, very generous with your time. I think that's all the main questions. Thank you again to you and your team at Patient Plan Direct. I think it's refreshing, as I said, to see somebody who cares, and it's nice to actually be able to pick up a phone, and hopefully long may that continue. Obviously you've only just touched on a brief part of what you can offer today, but I think I like the fact that it's bespoke and you don't just have one plan that fits all. So guys in the group, hopefully you've enjoyed this. It's been useful. This will be recorded and shared and made available for people in the group to listen to at their leisure as well. And Simon, I think your email address was Simon at
patientplandirect.co.uk.
Yeah, so Simon at patientplandirect.co.uk. I put .com into
.co.uk. Happy for you to share my mobile as well, Midi. As I say, we really do try to stand out as being super responsive, and we're humans at the end of a telephone. So if anybody's just got any questions and they'd rather just ping me a WhatsApp and arrange a time to have a chat over a lunch or an evening, whether you come and work with us or not, I'm happy to help.
That's pretty cool, mate. Well, thank you again, Simon. Thank you to the group. We'll look out for that offer as well, and we'll put that live in the group. And then don't forget, guys, this is all part of the lead up to the Startup in Dentistry Live 2.0, which is the 14th of September. We've got a really, really engaging group of guest speakers, and please do give me your feedback on who you'd like, or what kind of topics you like covered. But I think when you see the list, you're going to have it covered. If there's any other questions, I'll forward them on to Simon, who will probably reach out to you directly. Please do send Simon your email and your details as well. I've got some of the emails from the registration that I'll forward on to him as well. So thank you all very much. Simon, you're a top man. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Cheers, man. Appreciate it.
Okay.